If you had to sum up Trouble in one word, how would you do it?
I'd say that we're real.
Trouble from Chicago, Illinois was formed in 1978 by Rick Wartell on guitar and vocals, along with Mike DePrima on bass and Mike Slepecki on drums. However, by 1981, Rick had completely revamped the lineup, adding second guitarist Bruce Franklin, vocalist Eric Wagner, drummer Jeff Olson, and bassist Tim Ian Brown, although he'd be replaced in 1983 by bassist Sean McAllister. In February of 1983, Trouble recorded a live show in Chicago, which Jeff Olson sent out to Brian Slagle of Metal Blade Records. This got the band signed to a record deal with the label and an appearance on the Metal Massacre 4 compilation with the track The Last Judgment later that year. Then, in 1984, Trouble would release their debut album on Metal Blade, which was initially self-titled. Along with the St. Vitus self-titled album released a month prior, this is one of the very earliest American doom metal albums, which stood out by focusing on the heavier and often slower aspects of traditional heavy metal at a time when speed and thrash were quickly gaining popularity. With a massive nod to Black Sabbath and perhaps Witchfinder General, Trouble lingers in dirge-like riffs for much of the album, delivering oppressive rhythms with plenty of gunk.
Could you please, in layman's term, tell us what gunk is?
Well, it's a word that we made up. It's more or less the sound effect of our guitar sound when it's crunching. Gunk, gunk.
Trouble also set themselves apart with Wagner's Christian-themed lyrics, delivered with his grainy, somewhat melancholic vocals, which add perfectly to an overall mournful atmosphere. And unlike the faith-based lyrics of, say, Stryper, Trouble delves more into rejecting temptation and warnings against evil forces in the world.
Does this group have any ideas or goals they want to convey?
I guess just to spread the word, like, that there is trouble in the world and be successful.
For the word trouble and all in the world, you see a lot more of it nowadays, and what we're trying to do is strive for peace instead of war and all this hatred that's going on, and we're trying to do it through our music, and it's just something that, goes on with the material we write and ideas we get going.
And the doom vibes are occasionally punctuated by energetic guitar work and more aggressive passages, while tracks like Bastards Will Pay and The Fall of Lucifer are more up-tempo than not. Plus, the album single, Assassin, is a headbanger from beginning to end. With enough tracks already written for 2 albums before signing to Metal Blade, Trouble started recording immediately after touring, releasing The Skull in 1985. In many ways, The Skull is a direct continuation of the sound from the debut, with more heavy, deliberate riffs and a depressing vibe. But even so, I can't say The Skull grabs me as much as the first album did. I still think both are good, but it does seem like the most memorable tracks were selected for the first release. Still, The Skull is a classic doom metal album that I would recommend to any fan of the genre, with a nice mix of slow and up-tempo riffs, along with way more mid-tempo stuff than on the debut. Plus, there's some pretty sweet guitar work to be found here, like the solo on Gideon. But even more than the music, much of the desperate atmosphere on The Skull comes from Eric, who was dealing with some substance abuse at the time, and his heavy lyrics, which again delve deeply into biblical references, including the title track, which recounts the crucifixion of Jesus. Eric was in a bad way. He'd gotten into cocaine and alcohol, and it was seriously messing him up. We had to watch as he fought those inner demons. Listen to the song The Skull, and you'll hear Eric was crying out for help. The same is also true of The Wish. Those are heavy lyrics. One of the reasons we wanted to call the album The Skull was because that song perfectly captured the mood of the album. After The Skull, Sean and Jeff would both leave the group and be replaced by bassist Ron Holzner and drummer Dennis Lesh for Trouble's third album, Run to the Light, released in the summer of 1987.
I told you that the bastards will pay. Maybe not yet, but they'll see the day. I told you that God tempted no man, and you know we got to do what we can. I can tell some of you still can't see. When are we going? Stop this misery.
Run to the Light is an improvement over The Skull, in my opinion, kicking off with The Misery Shows, a somewhat thrashy opener which incorporates some proggy elements like a synth intro, along with Eric's lyrics, which come off as a little more hopeful this time around.
In these troubled times, you ask me, how can we be saved? Tell all the people, everyone you meet, the answer is love.
In fact, I think the whole first half in particular is really strong on Run to the Light, with stuff like the very blues-oriented Thinking of the Past or On Borrowed Time, which feels like the first proper doom metal track on here, complete with a funeral march opening. But much like the entire album, this track changes tempos and moods throughout, even seeming to tap into a little Led Zeppelin influence along with the Black Sabbath.
How long can I go on? Listen to my fears. I'm so tired of living on borrowed time. I feel so sad. The world is driving me mad, 'cause it's never enough to please.
And of course, the title track also rips, especially considering it finally gave us a Trouble music video.
Cross over children to the other side. Lost little children, run to the light. Look at all the lonely people. All I see is despair, and you lost in confusion.
There isn't much to the video other than concert footage and Eric kind of wandering aimlessly around a junkyard. But even so, this is a fantastic emotional track with an excellent acoustic bridge right in the middle.
Afraid of myself, and sometimes I don't know where I'm going.
And Eric's voice is perfect on this one too, dredging up mournful feelings with his morose yet powerful delivery.
In the light, you will find the truth. All the answers for those who want to know. I want to know.
Side 2 is also solid overall, but Peace of Mind and Born in a Prison are pretty standard doom-leaning heavy metal, and Tuesday's Child didn't do much for me in general. The beginning is probably my favorite track on the second half, with more of a progressive feel that again goes through a variety of tempos and styles, ultimately culminating in an epic cacophony of doom.
All is forgiven. In the beginning, time to start living. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Trouble would eventually get picked up by Rick Rubin's Deaf American Records, and with new drummer Barry Stern on board, they'd release another self-titled album in 1990, with their debut becoming known as Psalm 9.
Be so lonely because we can't see where the quiet winds live. Streets where all the old folks give so much love. At the end of my days, time to change my ways. At the end of my days.
Overall, this album is great, with the band both updating their sound and also digging deeper into their 70s roots and influences at a time when a lot of heavy bands were going more blues or grunge. The first half in particular serves up a lot of Led Zeppelin vibes, for example, with bluesy groove riffs and again, Eric's plant-like vocals.
Rain must be waiting for the train. All the people, they stop and stare. There's nobody there. Psychotic reaction. Hell in disguise. Psychotic reaction. The old man dies.
And on this album, you're working with producer Rick Rubin. What do you think are going to be some of the changes working with Rick?
The music's going to be a lot more straightforward, and hopefully he can reproduce our live sound.
And what is really the live feeling of the band Trouble?
Just heavy like Sabbath.
With the twist of Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin meets Sabbath.
Also, The Misery Shows Act 2 sounds like it could be right off of Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon album.
Sitting here, wondering about things that only the Lord knows. Trying to feel all the pain you have inside. Misery shows.
It's an appropriately bizarre video with shots of the band in the desert and black and white clips of an idyllic childhood, but it also unfortunately cuts out almost 4 minutes of the song.
Take his hand. The time has come to learn.
For me, the second side of this album is where it really shines, focusing more on the dark, powerful doom metal you'd expect from Trouble, with tracks like R.I.P.
Spin open to the skies. No more lies. Those very notes upon the grave could have been saved. From the garden of the brave, she finds her six and peace.
There's so much good stuff on here, including some standout tracks that I didn't have time to mention, like The Wolf and the badass closer, All Is Forgiven. It's arguably Trouble's most mature album, with some fantastic songwriting that helped them transition away from the white metal label given to them by Metal Blade, and into a more polished, psychedelic-tinged doom sound. This Trouble lineup would remain unchanged for a second and final album on Deaf American, 1992's Manic Frustration.
Let's just start from here. Reach as far as we can see. Tell them you came to look in my eyes. You saw the morning appear in the skies, yeah. Come on, baby, touch the sky.
Rather than completely rehash the 70s sounds from the 1990 album, this one goes back a decade earlier to mine Beatles-esque melodies and Jimi Hendrix-style riffs, evoking much more of a psychedelic stoner rock vibe than doom metal. This is definitely not a bad album, but Trouble is also going for a specific sound on Manic Frustration that's quite a bit different from the stuff they became known for early on, so your taste may vary on this one.
We can see the color of our dreams if we'd all have been sleeping. I can see the blind man laughing. Excuse me while I close my eyes.
You worked with producer Rick Rubin on Deaf American Guru, we know him well, for Manic Frustration. How did you get on with him? How did you like his style? Because he tends to be very laid back and leave you to get on with it.
Yeah, actually, I liked his style a lot on this album because he came in and did the drums and left and let us do it by ourselves, and it worked out really well. You know, instead of him standing there with a whip, you know, he gave us the free reins to do what we wanted, and you know, we were really happy with the product. So.
The hazy psychedelia and groovy stoner rock mentality is on full display in the one music video for the album too, Memory's Garden, with kaleidoscope visuals and lava lamp color schemes.
Someday down that lonely road, you'll hear me call your name. We don't dream of good times, only love in our minds.
That's Memories Garden. As you said, a real life experience. In this case, a song about maybe losing a loved one.
Well, I'll tell you, at the time I wrote that it wasn't true yet. Sometimes it seems like, you know, when I write lyrics that they do come true, or they really are, but I just don't realize. But this one didn't come true until later. So it was kind of weird. And the video was weird too to us, you know. It was kind of spooky sometimes.
But even if the peace and love stoner rock isn't exactly your thing, this album is still worth checking out. As usual, the guitar work is excellent, and the solos are a highlight of nearly every song. Some stuff was just okay for me. I can't say I was too moved by the ballad, Rain for example, but stuff like The Sleeper is pretty cool, and I enjoyed the last 3 tracks in particular, including Hello Strawberry Skies, which stood out with some energetic shredding.
Strawberry skies, where the world never dies.
Manic Frustration would fail to connect with a larger audience and they'd be dropped by Deaf American. But Trouble would continue on with original drummer Jeff Olson returning in 1993. And in 1995, this lineup would release the band's 6th album, Plastic Greenhead. And I gotta say, I like this album quite a bit more than Manic Frustration. While Trouble's previous album is solid overall for what it was going for, it lays it on pretty thick with the psychedelic 60s vibes. They're still readily apparent on Plastic Greenhead, but the band also puts way more of their own spin on it here, with heavy riffs and more original melodies. There's more of a spacey, stoner doom atmosphere to this one in general, but on the more blatantly psychedelic side, we get stuff like the cover of the Monkees' Porpoise song, which itself was that band's attempt at late 60s hazy, lyrically weird stoner rock. There's also a cover of Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles, which is again good, but also feels kind of unnecessary. But this time, a lot of the music has a lot more grunge influence, but more in that warbly Soundgarden kind of way, with some vaguely Kurt Cobainish vocals from Eric. So on one hand, it's all fairly similar to stuff Trouble had done before, but it feels fresher and the whole album flows together really well. There's another sort of Pink Floyd-ish ballad on here, and even that one's pretty good.
Come on, listen to the wind, my friend. You have said, come on, listen to the wind, my friend. She is everywhere.
But despite putting out their best release in years, Trouble would still have problems, and Eric would leave the band in 1997, being replaced for a few years by Kyle Thomas, until he returned in 2002. Trouble would also be joined by new bassist Chuck Robinson around that time, and in 2007, 12 years after their last album, this lineup of Trouble would release Simple Mind Condition on Escapee Music.
It's where we all must go. Love is in the air and flowers in her hair. Your most passionate desire. I'm going home.
And unfortunately, I can see why this album seems to be most Trouble fans' least favorite. It's kind of disjointed overall, being recorded over 4 or so years, and leans way more into the grunge thing. It feels like it came out 10 years too late, and even then, the songs compiled on Simple Mind Condition just aren't very compelling, and offer very little reason to revisit the album after an initial listen.
Said it won't be long now. Spirits are everywhere. With every passing moment, heaven is over there. Hell is only a state of mind. In all things of this earth, I also find.
Ultimately, Simple Mind Condition is just very forgettable. There's still some cool guitar here and there, but even that's not enough to raise this album up beyond a mid-level collection of groove metal stoner rock songs.
You put me one step closer to my grave. They only come while I'm in bed. Oh no. And what I think they really want is to have me dead. My, simple mind condition. My, simple mind condition.
Eric would leave the band again in 2008, and vocalist Corey Clark would come on along with drummer Mark Lira replacing Jeff Olson. Chuck Robinson would also drop out of the band, being replaced by bassist Shane Pasquale. However, both Corey and Shane would leave by 2012, with Kyle Thomas returning as vocalist on Trouble's most recent album, 2013's The Distortion Field, their first release as a 4-piece. Even with an hour-plus runtime, the Distortion Field is definitely better than Simple Mind Condition, going in more of a heavy, vintage direction that you'd expect from Trouble, with a mix of styles from previous albums.
Telling me that I got no choice, yeah, I can hear drifting through, searching for
There's a little doom and stoner rock included, of course, more of those Soundgarden-y vibes, and plenty of old school sounds from founding guitarists Rick Wartell and Bruce Franklin, who also handle bass duties on this album. And Kyle Thomas is a good fit too, different enough from Eric, but still delivering powerful vocals.
Stand tall and fight. The wicked cannot hide from the hunters of
But ultimately, I can't say a lot of this album really stuck with me once it was over. It definitely has its moments, and everyone involved sounds great. But from a songwriting standpoint, it's a bit uneven. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't say it's one of my personal top Trouble albums. After the release of the Distortion Field, Trouble would bring on permanent bassist Rob Holtz. And in 2024, drummer Gary Naples would also join. And almost 13 years after the Distortion Field, this lineup is apparently still working on a new album, but no new material has surfaced yet. And sadly, Eric Wagner would pass away from complications due to COVID in 2021, putting an end to any chance for a classic lineup reunion. So for now, that's Trouble. And your homework for this influential band should definitely include Trouble or Psalm 9 from 1984, The Skull from 1985, Run to the Light from 1987, and Trouble from 1990. From there, Manic Frustration from 1992 may work better for some listeners, but I found Plastic Greenhead from 1995 to be the best of the later Trouble records. But what do you think? Let me know what your favorite Trouble albums are in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this look back at one of the very first American doom metal bands, and maybe discovered some new favorite tracks. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you very much. Good night. Peace